Welcome back to Seed Time Harvest. My name is Kim, and I'm glad you're here. We are going to talk about our mulch, compost, wood chips, and what is the difference? Where do we use them? And we are going to kind of get some things straight because I think people get confused on where to use these different things and how to use these different things. There's a lot of misinformation out there. We're going to go in here and sit down. I really need to work on that fence, but look at that. Roselle. Most impressive plant in plants this year. I don't know though. My alyssum is a great contender. Great contender. Alrighty, here we are, all settled in this little nook in the garden. I am really enjoying the Roselle. It is exploding with blooms, and with Roselle, you never know if you're going to get a good harvest of calyxes before the end of the year, because sometimes it turns cold fast and we just don't get a harvest. So we're going to discuss compost, mulch, and wood chips. I was recently on a post in Facebook. Lots of misinformation about wood chips, and it's understandable, very understandable, but I just want to talk about it because you can use wood chips as mulch without lots of bumbles, without compromising your soil health. So when you get a load of wood chips like I got the other day, it's a big load, okay? I can pile it up and leave it, tarp it for a couple years, let it turn into compost. Compost is simply organic matter that has broken down and turned into soil or soil-like substance. Looks like soil, smells like soil. And you can mix compost in with your soil. You can use it as a top dressing like mulch. And you can direct plant into it, sow into it, it's fine. But wood chips, when in their raw, chunky state, whether you buy a bag at the store labeled mulch, or you get a delivery from a tree trimmer like I did, my wood chips are going to be used as a top dressing to hold in moisture and smother out grass, hopefully. So it's going to be used as a mulch. Mulch is simply anything you put on top of the soil to hold in moisture, to keep the soil cool in the summer, especially here in Texas, zone 8, whatever. We get really hot summers, and we need that extra layer of mulch to keep our plants' roots cool. So, and you can use, I have a thermometer I use. You can test your bare soil versus your soil with mulch. And there is a significant difference It really helps with summer fruiting crops to keep the soil cool, because if they have cool roots, they will still produce. Knowing the difference can alleviate the stress of rumors that if you mulch your bed with wood chips, that you're going to tie up the nitrogen and you're just not going to get any growth out of your plants. If you mix wood chips into your beds, into the soil, it certainly will tie up the nitrogen. But when you just put them on top of the soil, like I will be doing with a lot of my potted plants here, I will be using those wood chips and leaves as a mulch. I will not be mixing it in the soil. I will be laying it just straight across the top of the soil, and it will break down over time. If I just leave it and I don't remove it year to year, it will completely decompose over time. And it adds nutrients to the soil. I do know that some of the wood chips are from cedar, so they are a pest repellent, and critters, don't like cedar, so that's a added benefit. Now, I would not go to the store and just buy cedar mulch, but having that wood chips on top of my soil as a mulch, it'll be fine. I don't know if you can see these little blooms here. This is a new plant that I had seeded, and this one especially is gorgeous. It's lavender, and they must be from my red noodle beans. So I just wanted to point those out. And then, of course, all the roselle and the flowers on the roselle. It's very picturesque in this little corner of my garden. So back to our mulch. So when we purchase mulch at the store, it can be dyed. Like black mulch is dyed, and that is not something. Red mulch, different brown mulches, they're dyed, and that's not something we want to use in our garden near our food, because those are just chemical dyes. It's not good for the soil. It's not good for the plant. I have seen people use that, and it actually killed some of their plants, some of their more sensitive plants. But if you can get a chip drop that is nationwide here in America, and you can sign up, and sometimes with a donation, you'll get your chips a little faster. Now, I found my wood chips just driving down the road. There was a tree trimmer trimming trees around the power lines, and I stopped and asked them, could I get some wood chips? And they were more than happy to bring them to me, because I live way out in the country, and they don't want to drive, a long distance to have to dump their truck, So anyway, I hope the birds in the background are not annoying you. They do not annoy me, and so sometimes I forget how loud they are. But I am so thankful for some of these birds that have finally kind of moved back into the neighborhood. I've seen some in my garden, some little sparrows and whatnot. So it's a very peaceful, very foggy morning. I don't know if you can see this tree over here, how foggy that is over there. Anyway, it's just a beautiful morning, especially for videography, because the sun is not very friendly when I'm videotaping, and I'm trying not to have a bunch of shadows. So wood chips in and of themselves are extremely beneficial for the garden when you use them as a mulch. But you don't ever want to mix them into the soil, because when you mix them into the soil, every surface of that wood chip begins to utilize the available nitrogen to break down. And that is just what happens. It is not, it's just not a good idea to mix in wood chips. And I know people have done that. They think, oh, I don't have time to pull the mulch off before I add new soil. And they cover the wood chips, and then their garden will suffer because the nitrogen's being tied up. And I bought some soil bagged, supposedly compost, last year. And this happens almost every year. When I run out of Pro Mix, sometimes I will go for a cheaper bag. And I had heard that this local company was fantastic. It's the best ever. You can buy it at Lowe's. It's so good. So I fell for it, and I bought a couple bags, and I brought it home, and it was the worst soil I've ever bought. And I didn't pay attention. I was in a hurry doing my winter sowing. A lot of my winter sowing projects did not come up because of that type of soil. And all it was is that it was really chunky and chippy. And when it's chunky and chippy like that, then you can't get seedlings up and expect them to do well, because there's no nitrogen available for that. Now, the plants that I did end up recognizing what was going on, I used a lot of fertilizer. I have rabbit manure available, and I also used my plant tone from Espoma, and it worked really well to keep my plants going. But otherwise, I had major fail in the spring. The last bag I needed to make into potting soil, and I was mixing it with vermiculite, perlite, and something else. And I sifted it. I have an old fryer basket, and I spent hours sifting all the chunks out of that soil. Big, huge wood chips out of supposedly compost. And all it was is they didn't fully compost the wood chips. They got in a hurry, which has happened a lot since 2020. More people now are gardening than ever. And so it's a very common practice to turn out a product that's not fully composted and call it compost. I think that there should be some kind of regulation on that. So when you buy a bag that's labeled to compost, that you know you are getting compost. And they should call that bag should have just been called mulch. And so there's a lot of recipes out there to make your own potting soil, because I do garden predominantly in pots. I use a lot of potting soil. If you figure every tub that I have is probably 2 full bags of the Pro Mix block, maybe 3. And then of course over time it shrinks. So I use lots of compost. And if I had room, I would have a huge compost pile here. And that's one of the first things I did when I started gardening in West Texas, is I built a compost bin, because I recognized the benefit of it. All of our leaves, cut grass, kitchen scraps would go into that pile, and within a year I had the most beautiful product. I just had 2 bays, I guess you would call them. I had tied pallets together, and I put everything in one, and periodically I would shovel it over to the other one and water it occasionally. You know, out in West Texas it's windy and dry, and I would water it, and it does not take long to make compost. Wood chips, mulch, compost, they're all different, and they're not really, mulch is simply top dressing for a bed, top dressing. Mulch can be cardboard, mulch can be leaves, mulch can be wood chips, mulch can be stones. I've seen people that use landscape cloth and then put stones on top. Just mulch. Mulch is anything that covers the earth. Compost is a very fine soil-like material. You can mix it in with your soil. You can use it as mulch and top dress. There's a garden lady on YouTube. That's what they use. They have giant piles of compost, and they use it as mulch, and it is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Dark rich compost on top of the soil. It's just beautiful. They have a very fine, light, powdery, light colored soil, so that dark rich compost. And as it rains and gets watered, it takes the nutrients down into the soil. So that's very beneficial to use compost as a top dress. I don't trust bagged anything anymore. There are some local companies that will deliver compost, and or you can go pick it up with a pickup, you know, pick up a bed load of it. But I'm not going to do that right now. Like I said, I am leery of what's in those bags and what's in those piles. So yeah, you just have to find a trusted resource for compost and mulch and wood chips. Sometimes tree companies are taking out diseased trees. Well, you wouldn't want to bring that home and then put them around your trees, you know. So this company, they're just trimming power lines. So all the trees they were trimming were just big, beautiful, huge trees, healthy. And I feel confident I got a very good load of mulch from them. So anyway, we're going to do a video later and me moving mountains of mulch and what I use it for, and we'll talk about that later. In the meantime, if you haven't seen the video on garden cleanup, check that out. It's just about trimming and thinning our plants and making more room for more seeds. So thanks for coming along on this journey. I appreciate y'all so very much. And what seeds are y'all sowing?